So I just got finished watching a video about alcohol, and it's about what the evidence says and what it actually means. Because when I was drinking, I was very worried about the effects of alcohol, and generally the side effects were manageable, except for a few. And whilst it was a worry, I just generally didn't look into it very far, so I didn't really think, well, my family's never had, for example, cancer or heart disease, so why bother? It turns out that can be a problem that I'm even facing now. Where I do have blood pressure issues, and I've no doubt that alcohol over the years has probably added to that, and also my obesity as well. I'm 140 fucking kilograms, and on a vegan diet, so yeah. But the video is called "How Dangerous Could One Be a Bee?" and most of its reportings are pretty accurate by the sound of it anyway. Because they actually go further than the studies show, like there's this J curve. They actually look into it and take into account factors that would essentially increase lifespan, and basically removing all the moderate drinkers and not heavy drinkers, but sort of like the between heavy and moderate, who were mainly rich people, and then you've got low income people who are obviously heavy drinkers or non-drinkers, and they've also accounted for people who supposedly quit heavy drinking and then go to no drinking at all, and that's essentially how the J curve works. So when you remove those factors, you do get a steady line of, you get like little to no what's the term, little to no chance, yeah, chance of mortality rate, and the heavier someone drinks, the higher it goes. And it's basically because it increases all your risk of cancer and cardiovascular disease. But I'm not a researcher or health professional, so I can't comment on how accurate those findings are. But it did get me thinking, what if this is why I'm currently feeling so burnt out all the time? Because the thing with alcohol is it's a build-up of chemicals. You know, I can't even handle 2 drinks, which goes to show that I'm really not built for it anyway. I remember I was around someone's at Christmas, and I picked out like 3 drinks I wanted to have over the course of the few days. Had one, and I felt okay, but then I had this other one, and about a quarter of the way through, I was like, ugh, these were like 500 milliliter bottles. I was starting to feel sick, and so at that point I just didn't want it, and yeah, it's a waste of alcohol, waste of money. And that should have been the warning sign for me, really. A few months ago, I quit alcohol completely, and I wanted to see if there are any benefits to it. The first few weeks, actually, I was really good. I was handling situations well, even supposedly stressful ones. And my burnout, autistic burnout, because it's important, was at an all-time low. Like, I wasn't feeling burnt out. I was actively doing things. Had a imagination that was being put to use, and potentially doing something with it. I started artwork I wasn't planning to make. I was doing so much. And yeah, so I quit. I used to drink like ciders and beers and the occasional like can of wine. They do them in cans. And I was like once or twice a week, maybe even 3 times. So it was pretty much moderate drinking. And I just quit on a whim recently, also because of really enough social pressure against it. It's not so much that I was drinking to be a crowd pleaser, I was drinking to calm myself. to calm my nerves and burnout and suppress it, really suppress feelings as well. Because it usually, like, alcohol can be a truth serum, but for me it's like, okay, I'm actually feeling relaxed, which I don't usually feel anyway. So it helped with that. And the reason I come off it obviously is because of a concern over physical health. But there was this other factor which I didn't see mentioned in this video, which kind of sucks, because their conclusion was like, oh, you can have a drink occasionally. Right, but that still means you have a risk of getting these issues, which didn't make sense, and that's the only bad part of the video. And really, the other thing that made me quit was also the social. It's all, I don't know what to call it, social norms or social pressure. There's a bit of both, actually. Because what annoys me about alcohol is the misuse of it. Because you get people who are sensible moderate drinkers who drink once or twice a week, but then you get people who drink every day, or people who just drink so much in one day that they end up getting into accidents. They start driving a car and killing people, which has had more deaths, I think, on percentage than drugs has. Which shows that it's more dangerous. I don't know if the finding is still accurate on that, to be fair. Even then, it's better to monitor this sort of thing and regulate it, and I sort of didn't really understand why alcohol was so expensive before. Seeing the mortality rates, it makes sense why that would be. It has a good reason to be taxed, and it should, honestly, the tax from it should just pay towards victims of drunk related incidents or accidents. So drink driving, like, families should be compensated, obviously. And even domestic abuse, like, obviously victims should be compensated. There's various different things that we need to do better. And one of the things about alcohol is that these implications are quite heavy, and when you yourself are drinking, you feel like you're part of that problem. And that was really one of the biggest kickers for me, because it's like, oh, I know multiple people who don't drink anymore, and they used to. It's kind of like, oh, why do they do that? And I didn't get the reason necessarily, but to me it was like, there's probably a good reason why, and I'd probably just need to find it. And what I found is the social implication of it. To be a drinker alongside non-drinkers doesn't mean you're one out. But it's not so much about that, it's about what it does to other people and what it encourages, because you see it on advertisements and on TV, even on the radio, even games. There's like the glorification of alcohol, and I've never agreed with it anyway. So I've followed some people who don't drink or take drugs or even smoke before. There's a band I listen to called Hell That's On. The vocalist is very notably an ex-drug addict, and I think even an ex-alcoholic as well. He's done some amazing stuff. He's made songs around it. He's a drummer and a vocalist, and can do both at the same time. It's always been sort of embedded in my head, like, I'm listening to this band that condemns alcohol and drugs, but I myself am taking alcohol. And that's just like, oh, kind of feels weird, it feels hypocritical. Whereas it's kind of normal when you're drinking and, say, other bands are drinking as well. So you get into that rough situation of like, what's right and wrong here. And what I figured out was the consumption of alcohol is linked to every single incident that's out there. Same with like smoking, and I think this should be one of the things that smoking addicts should hear. as well in drug addicts. When you're part of the supply and demand, you are part of the problem. And that even means, like, for example, drugs. It can mean selling drugs to kids. It can mean selling smokes or cigarettes to kids, and even alcohol. And this is what I mean. It is literally part of the problem. Your money keeps them in high demand, and that ends up creating more supply, so that unfortunately kids can get their hands on it and potentially do devastating things. I happen to know a smoker, a child who smoked growing up. Didn't smoke in front of me, but he had a story about it because he quit eventually. He was like smoking from like 10 years old to about 12, I think. And yeah, it didn't really affect his body, but it's one of those things where I think he got caught and it was like, oh, yeah, I probably need to stop. But that happens. Like, it's kind of dangerous, and also if you're parents, like, there's going to be ways that children find your habits and start to take them on. That won't lie, I've witnessed it myself. I've seen someone smoking before, and also someone smoking once after they quit, which is really alarming. It's like shocking. I just didn't want to speak to them because I was like confused and outraged at the same time. It's always been quite traumatizing to me. I don't really understand why they did it though. So, yeah, it's rough, and really these problems only exist because people have done the same thing. They use drinking, drugs, and smoking as an outlet for their own problems, and you see this anyway of like the things that branch off of that are just are similar. Yeah, domestic abuse as well take out their own issues on the victim, unfortunately. That's why it's just so horrific of a situation. It's not always a case of, oh yeah, we need to condemn them. It's okay, we need to provide help and prevention. But that's why it needs to happen. So I guess that's my take on low alcohol consumption. Like, it's just not worth it in the end. You know, what it supports is what it does worldwide. You know, you find cheap alcohol and you're like, oh, okay, let's get that, drink it. And then suddenly, here the next week, like, someone's died in a car crash because of overconsumption. It's one of those things where the world is sick enough as it is, but this sort of thing adds on to it. And one of the things you probably only realise in sobriety is how much damage that does. It's not just to other people, but to yourself. Because you realise the impact of it, and you realise, oh shit, I was touching this. Like, how could I? You sort of feel like you were the perpetrator in the end. That's essentially why I can't really support alcohol or smoking anymore, even drugs for that matter. Not entirely anti-drug though, because there are uses for it. I've seen cases where people with like epilepsy or I think even like depression, like if they smoke cannabis, for example, or marijuana, it's one of them. I can't remember which is which. They see significant health benefits, and those are rare cases where, assuming it's under supervision of like doctors and stuff, you can literally save people's lives. And you have to monitor them as well, because if they're going out driving after it, it's like, oh, that's not good. Need to stop that. Yeah, that's kind of a situation. You know, alcohol and smoking isn't a cool thing, and I'll say this to like, this is like a message for children. It's not a fun thing to do. It may taste good, it may feel good, but in the end, it does more damage than you could ever realise. And that's saying a lot, really. And not to mention, it's probably not even financially a stable thing to do. Like for example, I swapped out alcohol for drinks I like Fentimans. I fucking love Fentimans drinks. They're just some of the best tasting drinks I've ever had, and they're better than standard cola. But I was swapping out for things like even Coca-Cola now. I'm trying to look for alternatives and more ethical ones. There's like various things like that that can help to replace it. And with stress as well, I'm still trying to find ways to help with my stress, to avoid getting stressed and avoid taking it on others if I do. And that's the situation I'm in at the moment. So 2 years sober, technically 27 years sober before that, 26 actually, probably is more accurate. So yeah, I haven't drunk. God, I sound like I'm drunk, but I haven't drunk for years. That's the other thing. The fucking romanticisation of what drunk actually means. People assume it's like saying weird shit and toppling over, feeling dizzy. But most people are moderate drinkers, other than occasional drinkers, do not experience that. And you always see it in the media and even just like TV and movies, even anime, somehow. People who drink go into this sort of spell, and that's not how it works at all. In fact, it's weird because they don't show the more sinister side of it, which itself would make it a fair representation. But yeah, like, they don't show someone beating their wives after a drink. They don't show car crashes of someone dying because of a drink. So there's no realistic representation of drinking. The same with like sex and even drugs and smoking. There's always a romanticisation. And that's another reason I don't support it. The moment a show can show me real sex, and fair, that's fair game. That'd be interesting as hell. I wouldn't consider it pornography, especially if it's like an sort of actor consensual thing. That's the really most important part there. You have a really good story, and then it's just one scene. Yeah, you get to see the graphic details, but for drinking alcohol and smoking, it's not. Drinking alcohol is the same thing. I mean, drugs, I mean. It's the same thing, there's good and bad, but romanticisation is a problem. And that's how I think people sometimes get trapped and get caught up in this issue. It's literally a dangerous idea that's being spread. And also, like, smoking is like presented as a cool thing anyway. And that's pretty much done bad things to the world. It's given people lung cancer and lung issues. I think it's even sped up like cancer. Like, it's so deadly, and I'm also one of these people who would call for alcohol to be wiped off the face of the planet along with cigarettes. Just simply because there's too many issues associated with it. And I'd also want to see. You could get bubbles in this game. Isn't that? Oh, anyway. I'd want to see warning signs on it. I want to see real gore on these alcoholic things. I want to see the real sort of realities of these things can cause. Like warning picture of like active domestic abuse, or warning picture of someone's horrific accident. Like, that's the sort of thing you need to put on there. And when I had alcohol, by the way, there wasn't a single one of them with something like that on it. It's just like an organisation that says like, don't limit drinking, or drink responsibly. And that was it. What the fuck sort of warning is that? And I think with like current political parties, at least in the UK, that is something that probably needs to be addressed, especially with like, because you can sort of associate other issues with it. There's no doubt been, because I've heard of this a while ago, because of another house speak, but football hooliganism. which is probably going to happen again soon because of the current climate. But people like that probably were drinking. And if that's going to happen again, like, we need to stop this. Seriously. Start limiting the supply of alcohol, start making non-alcoholic beverages are normal. And then we could start to see benefits. The only places alcohol should be used, obviously, medical terms. If it's like a wipe or even just medication, that's different uses for it. It's not never to say it's useless, but it is to say that there's a danger to how the general public misuse it. Again, the romanticisation feeds into that. Feeds into the misuse. It gives you a wrong idea. And that's not really how it works. Yeah, I do think that to an extent, even moderate or low drinkers are a problem. Because they still contribute to this problem. That is still an issue. It's kind of a major issue in my opinion. It's not the biggest one in the world at the moment right now. Still one to address. So that's my take on alcohol consumption and how low is actually safe. And the answer really is none. No alcohol consumption is safest for not just yourself but other people. Yeah, I consider drinking kind of a selfish thing anyway. Same with smoking and even like just personal drug use. It's just never a good sign for anyone. There are no doubt people who can use it properly, but we can't discredit the fact that this also keeps supply and demand there, and that causes those people to continue what they're doing. So, if anyone has any disagreements, I'm open to hearing them, for sure. But I just can't agree with the fact that these things have a place in society now, especially when younger people are less interested. And also, another thing I forgot to mention, but sometimes the companies themselves are just morally corrupt. I remember hearing about Brewdog and what they had done, and I was a bit confused because it's not very commonly reported on. They've basically been on apparently homophobic campaigns and stuff and said weird shit around the place, like this CEO has. Yeah, like that's the sort of thing you support. Like these industries want you to consume more alcohol. That's why they advertise, and I think it's disgusting that you can even advertise this. I'd make it illegal in the UK, plain and simple. If you're advertising alcohol when there's very real effects, it's going to be dishonest advertising. It's going to show you a glorification or romanticisation of it. It's not going to be real representation. And you know, even if they showed like I said, like the accidents or the wife beating sort of thing, like that's still not good because it's not going to dissuade anyone necessarily. Because idiots will continue to consume it. The point is like putting it off the market slowly and even converting it with probably subsidies to make it far less harmful. Like, it's just how it should be. Yeah, like I love non-alcoholic versions of the drinks I used to like that taste the same. But the problem is they don't exist, and it's very hard to find ones that are actually nice. I think the only thing I ever had that was low alcohol that was similar was probably Audi's own pink gin. It's low alcohol. Even then, like I just rather not touch it anymore. I'd rather go find like drink mixers and stuff and go from there really. Um, yeah, I think I've said everything I can. I need to go to the toilet badly, so end it here. Thanks for listening.